If you're here, chances are you have been bitten by the watch bug, or you're about to be. But before you drop hard-earned cash on the first grail, pump the brakes, because in the next few minutes I'm going to save you money, headaches, and a whole lot of buyer's remorse by exposing the 7 biggest mistakes nearly every new watch collector makes, including myself. We will talk hype traps, hidden service costs, why in-house movement isn't always king, and a few horror stories from my own early buying blunders. So be ready to protect your wrist and your wallet, and let's get started. So in-house movement is a term that gets thrown around a lot in the watch world. Whenever you click on watch specs on a website, it is something mentioned within the first few sentences when an in-house movement is being used in a watch, but what does it actually mean? What is an in-house movement, and what are the actual, implications for you as a watch owner in real life? So when you see a brand say a watch contains an in-house movement, they are claiming that the watch's movement, so the complete timekeeping mechanism, was designed, engineered, and manufactured by the brand itself, rather than just being bought from a specialized supplier such as ETA, Miyota, Sellita, Valjoux, etc. So owning the core technology lets a brand innovate. So for example, they get their own new escapements, high beat balances, and that kind of stuff. Then it signals high horological competence. So think of Rolex, Patek Philippe, or Grand Seiko. Therefore, in-house commands higher prices because collectors perceive it as rarer, harder to make, and more exclusive. From the watchmaker's perspective, it is also an important factor when it comes to independence. So, for example, brands that once relied on ETA accelerated in-house programs after the Swatch Group, which ETA belongs to, restricted movement deliveries in the early 2010s. But there are also some important side notes to in-house movements that I quickly want to cover. So you've got vertical integration versus outsourcing specific parts. So even the most in-house watchmakers still sometimes buy jewels, hairsprings, or balance staffs from specialized firms. And then we have modular derivations. So a brand may take a supplied ébauché, so it's like a basic movement kit, and very heavily re-engineer and decorate it, and then they still market that as in-house. And then you also have group sharing, so a movement developed by one manufacturer, for example, Tudor's MT calibers, but supplied to sibling brands may still be built as an in-house movement, within the group. And because there is no legal definition, collectors often dig into how much of a caliber is generally proprietary to judge how, I guess, pure the claim really is. So combining all of this, you can clearly see that the pros to in-house movements, but there are also, the flip sides to it. And because all of those characteristics an in-house movement brings to the table, they can be harder to service due to, maybe limited availability of spare parts or just time, since only certified or in-house watchmakers can handle that. So you might have to wait longer and things could be more costly. Some people also claim that there also be some kind of early run reliability issues when a new design hasn't had decades of field use, for example. So as you can see, it is not all that simple. In-house or no in-house shouldn't be the ultimate deal breaker and should ideally be looked at with nuance. Of course, it sounds cool, but it shouldn't deter you from watches that are not using in-house movements. Simple as that. Right, let's talk about something absolutely essential in my opinion: comfort and practical wearability. Sooner or later, you encounter a watch that sounds and looks perfect on paper. Specs are amazing, it looks great, has all the complications you're looking for, and budget-wise, it is also working out. And then you try it on, and then here it is. For example, you've got a watch so big that it looks like you are wearing a freaking dinner plate on your wrist, and one that probably also feels like you've been dragging around a heavy rock on your wrist after 8 hours of wear. Trust me, I know that specific feeling of heartbreak, of wishing so much you could make a watch work on your wrist, but feeling with all your heart that it just doesn't really fit well. So please don't ignore those feelings. It's one of the main reasons for buyer's remorse, and it can completely ruin the fun with your new watch. Ideally, you can check for weight, for bracelet options, micro adjustments, clasp comfort, and just how the watch fits, especially when it comes to case dimensions, so diameter and lug to lug. And then you can kind of guess to how it's going to wear before putting it on. And there are also so many cool material alternatives that you can choose between, whether it's actual weight that you prefer, so precious metals are heavier, or you would like a watch as lightweight as possible. So think of titanium, or just choosing a strap over a bracelet. And then size-wise, we've also come quite far within the last few years. So many watch brands offer the same watch, but in different sizes. So you sometimes don't even have to sacrifice your design preferences for the perfect fit. Price or cost, and I say this, will forever be tightly married with one's buying decision when it comes to watches. And yeah, a price tag that fits perfectly into your own budget is like a dream come true. I'm not going to say anything against it, but depending on the watch and offer, you should always keep in mind that in some cases, additional costs can occur, and you should never ignore or neglect even thinking about the total cost of ownership when it comes to watches. So let me give you a quick example of what I mean from this. So let's say you find a real cool vintage watch from the 80s. A bargain price vintage mechanical might need, servicing costs of 300 to 500 right away, because maybe it hasn't been serviced recently, or maybe it has never been serviced and some functional error is only occurring when you start wearing it because it was sitting around in a vault for quite some time. Or something, completely different, not something vintage related, but still part of the total cost of ownership. Let's say you buy something off of the secondary market and it comes from overseas or somewhere else. So you've got import tax, you've got duties, perhaps no factory warranty. So factor in servicing, insurance, taxes, straps, bracelets, potential resale value, and all of this, not just a sticker price. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here and put down a great offer that you found online. I just want you to be aware of the whole package. Just keep in mind that just the price tag sometimes isn't going to cover the whole money you'll be spending on this watch. And just keeping this in mind is going to save you a lot of, money and just stress overall. Okay, let's cover nothing that regards the watch in itself, but the person or shop or whatever you're buying it from. Of course, ADs not really count in here. Those authorized dealers should be fine, hopefully, in general. But I'm talking about sources aside from that. So whether your watch is new or pre-owned or whatever, it is advised to buy only from reputable resellers or individuals with documented references who are clear on their warranty and return policies with, and this is so important, traceable payment and shipment methods. Replicas and Franken watches are everywhere right now, and it is your own personal responsibility to really ensure that you have taken every possible step to really just avoid getting scammed and buying outside the AD network. And no, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to scare you into the arms of ADs and poo-poo on grey market dealers. Absolutely not. I mean, my husband is a grey market dealer, but that has just opened my eyes even more to some weird business practices from others and how important it is to really do your due diligence when it comes to buying things, regardless of what it is, not only, watches on the internet, of course. Getting swept up in Instagram buzz or forum hype can steer you towards watches that don't really match your wrist size, personal style, or daily needs, and I totally get it. The algorithm on my social media apps feeds me with watch releases every time I open the apps, and then I see these new watches and I read about them, and I'm just like 5 minutes later convinced that I absolutely need this new watch. And I do have a real life example for this. I think it was like 1 or 2 days after I read the press release back when the Oris Aquis upcycle got released that I went to my AD and I bought the watch. I'm not saying I'm regretting this purchase, no, but I love my Aquis, but at the same time, it should have been smarter to give this a bit more time. I knew back then that every dial on the upcycle is going to be different, but I didn't realize how different it's going to be. And then after a while, a couple of days went by and weeks, and those Aquis upcycles popped up on the internet with the different dials. And I looked at my own and was like, damn, I maybe would have went for a different one, but I didn't. So that was on me. I was too impatient and it bought something even though I should have given it more time. So my own personal rule since then is to wait at least 2 to 3 months before buying anything that expensive to really make sure that I'm making a good decision for myself. And also obviously always try on pieces before pulling the trigger if possible, because that really helps a lot, especially if you've got a smaller wrist and I'm not sure about the sizing. But yeah, just please take your time. Don't just run into the AD or go online like 1 day after release and go for it. Could work out for you, it didn't for me, not really. So yeah, I wish I've done it differently. Neglecting future resale value. Now, before you go into the comments and crucify me for saying this, hear me out. And I'm not saying that you should only go for watches with good resale value, no. But what I am saying is completely ignoring resale value as part of the whole watch package. See, I see resale value as part of the whole entire cost of ownership package. Because if you get into collecting watches, you usually plan on buying and owning more than just one watch. Collections grow, they change, they shrink, and then they grow again. They're very dynamic, and it is totally normal and, fun process, and one of, I would say, probably the most exciting part of building, and maintaining your watch collection. So ideally you would have, of course, a never-ending flow of money, but that's not the case for most of us, and it is not for me. I mean, I wish I had that. So you just have to be smart about how you use your money for watches. And it happens that some watches have a great resale value, some absolutely do not. And, some are just kind of in between. And that being said, it is good to simply be aware of this because, I mean, look at it this way. If you know for how much you will be able to sell a certain watch, it can, help you with your next purchase decision. If you know that you might want to buy a certain watch within the next, I don't know, like 2 years, but you want to wear something different. In the meantime, you can choose, to buy a watch with the potential to be able to park your money in this watch so you can use it for the one that you want to buy in 2 years rather than something that completely burns the money if you were to resell it. Heavy on the if. So only if you have 2 watches that you like equally and maybe one has a better resale value than the other. It could be a smart choice to go for the one with the better resale value because then you can, sell it in 2 years and put that money towards the watch that you would actually want to buy. So yeah, that being said, some other customizations can also impact value retention once you own a watch. So let's say you want to have it engraved or, want to change original parts for some aftermarket things. So for example, I have a wedding watch. We exchanged watches on our wedding day and we had our case bags engraved. So God forbid if we were ever to sell those, selling them with an engraved case bag would definitely lower the value and we would have to replace the case bags. That would cost money. So yeah, something to keep in mind. So in short, be aware of it and make an informed decision. And that is pretty much all there is to it. And lastly, something that really ties into my Oris Aquis upcycle example that I've mentioned before. And this point is pretty quickly covered because I get it. New watches get released on the daily. And pretty much whenever you go online, chances are pretty high that you see a watch that you really want, but don't buy too much too fast. I'm not sure anymore if it was it like a week or 2 days or something. But right after buying my Aquis upcycle, I went back into the same AD and I bought this Nomos Club Pneumatic. And again, I'm not saying that I'm hating this watch or totally regret my decision, but in hindsight, I really don't know what has gotten into me back then. I would absolutely advise against filling up your watch roll as quickly as possible to prevent buyer's remorse and amassing just a pile of possibly hard to sell pieces, because this one has a pretty large lug to lug, but I got this on the extra small strap. So that's going to be a bit difficult to find a buyer who's wanting this specific mix of strap and case. So I would possibly have to get a new bracelet or strap for this, and that would cost money. So I think you can see where I'm going with this. I would just like to advise you to start slowly, wear what you buy for several weeks, months ideally, and just let your taste evolve before adding the next watch. And that is pretty much all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed this, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to me on Instagram. It is Jenni, same spelled as here on YouTube. And then I will hopefully see you in my next video. Bye.